Your hand is in a drawer. You are holding a cable. You do not know what it connects to. You have not used it in 4 years, and some quiet part of you already knows you never will, but you cannot drop it. Your fingers close around it, and a small voice in your chest says, "Keep it. What if you need it someday?" Now zoom out. For roughly 300,000 years, members of your species owned almost nothing. Every object a human possessed had to earn its place because every object had to be carried on a human back across miles of open ground. And yet here you stand, the descendant of those weightless people, in a home holding thousands of objects, unable to release one dead cable into a trash can. Why does letting go hurt? Your brain believes something about that cable, something that was absolutely true for your ancestors and is almost never true for you. Hold that thought, because by the end of this, you will understand why the ache is real, why it is ancient, and why it was designed to be there. Start with the world your body still thinks it lives in. Your ancestors were mobile. Hunter-gatherer bands moved with the seasons, following water, following animals, following ripening plants. Anthropologists who lived with the Juahansi people of the Kalahari, one of the best documented foraging societies on Earth, recorded something that shocked them. A person's possessions were so few that they could be gathered in minutes and carried without strain. A digging stick, a bow, a few containers, some ornaments. That was a life. And this was not poverty. Researchers like Richard Lee found that these foragers met their needs with only a few hours of work a day, and some anthropologists went as far as calling them the original affluent society. They were not rich in things. They were rich in the absence of things. So how did people who owned a handful of objects become people who rent storage units for objects they never see? Here is the first clue. When you own almost nothing, every single object is life support. A cutting edge is not clutter. It is tomorrow's meal. A water container is not a knickknack. In the dry season, it is the difference between crossing the land and dying on it. Lose your fire kit on a cold night, and the night gets very long and possibly very final. In that world, losing a thing could cost vastly more than the thing itself. Your brain kept score of that math. Psychologists Daniel Kahneman and Amos Tversky showed in some of the most replicated work in behavioral science that human beings feel losses far more intensely than equivalent gains. Losing something hurts roughly twice as much as gaining the same thing feels good. They called it loss aversion, and it is not a quirk. It is a survival setting. And it goes further. In a famous series of experiments, researchers handed people ordinary coffee mugs, and within minutes, the new owners demanded roughly twice as much money to give up a mug as other people were willing to pay to get one. Nothing about the mug had changed. Ownership changed the brain. The moment a thing becomes yours, your mind quietly reclassifies it. This is part of my survival kit now. Scientists call it the endowment effect. Your garage calls it that box you haven't opened since 2 moves ago. Nature had already run this experiment, by the way. High in the mountain forests, a gray bird called the Clark's nutcracker buries thousands of pine seeds every autumn and remembers enough of the hiding places to eat through the winter. Squirrels do it, jays do it. When winter is real, keeping is not a disorder. Keeping is genius. Your lineage simply learned the trick late and then learned it far too well. Do you see the trap forming? You carry a mind built for a world where objects were rare, hard to make, and life-critical. And you woke up in a world where objects are endless, nearly free, and mostly meaningless. The alarm that once guarded a fire kit now guards a drawer of dead cables. The circuit did not change. The world did. Watch it work in the old world for a moment. Dawn on a dry savanna. Orange sky, long shadows. The band is moving camp today, heading toward the river country, and a woman kneels by the ashes of last night's fire, deciding what comes and what stays. She lifts a scraping stone, worn smooth by her own hands over 2 seasons. Stone this good took a full day of searching to find. She weighs it in her palm. Every item she takes, she must carry for 3 days of walking, and every item she leaves, she may never replace. Her daughter watches. This is the lesson. You keep what keeps you alive, and you release everything else, because carrying has a cost of its own. Weight was the original clutter. Her people solved it every single time they moved. Then, around 12,000 years ago, the walking stopped. Farming arrived, and with it came houses, granaries, walls. For the first time in the history of your lineage, a human being could accumulate more than a human back could carry, and the cost of keeping things quietly fell toward 0. Keep a broken pot, and it costs you nothing. Keep a jar of seed grain, and it might carry your family through a failed harvest. Storage stopped being impossible and started being wisdom. The people who kept things survived the bad years. The people who kept things became your ancestors. And here is the twist. You have probably been told that hoarding is the ancient instinct, some deep caveman greed for piles of stuff. It is almost exactly backwards. Your deepest ancestors were the most ruthless declutterers who ever lived, because their own legs kept them honest. What is ancient is not the pile. What is ancient is the pain of loss, the alarm that fires when something leaves your hand forever. For 300 millennia, that alarm was priced for a world where a lost tool could mean a lost life. Then storage became free. The alarm never got the memo, and the pile is simply what happens when an ancient alarm meets an endless supply. So look at your home again with those eyes. This is why throwing away feels like danger, while acquiring feels like nothing. Gaining was always the cheap part for your brain. Losing was always the expensive part. This is why just in case feels so convincing. On the savannah, just in case was frequently correct. This is why it is so much easier to carry a bag into the house than to carry one out. And you are not imagining the weight of it all. Researchers at UCLA who studied ordinary families in their own homes found that living surrounded by dense clutter measurably raised stress in the people who had to manage it. The savannah solved clutter with distance. Your house has no third day of walking. But notice something gentler underneath all of this. The box of your grandmother's letters, your child's first drawings, the ticket stub from a night that changed your life. When your hand refuses to release those, that is not a malfunction either. In a forager band, objects were rare enough that a carried thing meant something. This came from someone. This holds a story. This is who we are. An heirloom is ancient technology for holding on to people who are gone. Your brain is not confused about those letters. It is doing exactly what it evolved to do, keeping the dead close to the fire a little longer. So what do you do with a drawer full of alarms? You do not need to become a monk, and you do not need another storage bin. You need to renegotiate with a very old guard. When you hold an object and feel that flare of, what if I need it? Name what is actually happening. That is loss aversion. That is a Stone Age price tag stuck on a modern trinket, and the price is wrong. Then ask the foragers question instead. Not, could this ever be useful, because almost anything could. Ask, would I carry this on my back for 3 days to keep it? Your ancestors asked that question every time they moved, and it kept their lives light enough to survive. And be kind about the rest. You are not lazy, you are not broken, you are running scarcity software in a world of abundance, and the guilt you feel about the clutter is just the collision of those two worlds, happening quietly in your chest. So go back to the drawer. Your hand is around the cable again, and the small voice says, what if? This time, you know how old that voice is. You know what it was built to protect, and you know that the danger it remembers is gone. Think it. It kept your people alive for 300,000 years. Then open your hand.